Hello. Um, this is crazy. Thank you all so much for being here. This is my first time doing anything like this. I've done panels, I've done talks, I've sold my art at cons, I've done commissions and stuff. I've never had an art show. I've really just never done anything like this. I haven't created works where I make them with the intent of showing them and selling them, so kind of like a real artist. So thank you so much for being here. You all took time out of your day to be here, and I'm really thankful. So if you're not too familiar with my work in the past, here's kind of a brief overview. Here's a random sample of my own work. I love cute girls. I love things that are a little weird and morbid. I do work a lot typically with just black and white, partially because I feel generally pretty satisfied with the quality, the chunkiness I get out of my digital line work, but also because I feel like I'm not that great at color, to be honest. Whenever I start to finish a color piece, I tend to jump all over the place in style, which is fun on one hand. I don't really go in with expectations, but I also don't have an inherent style of color work. I kind of make it up as I go every time. So I've done plenty of color pieces overall, especially professionally, but black and white feels a little bit more like my space, which I think you'll see kind of in the work here, in my sketchbooks that we're selling here. They're all black and white. You're not going to find color in them. So when Nucleus approached me about this show, I thought, cool, I can show off some of my work. That'll be fun. And then I realized shows like this are usually traditional media, and I don't really draw on paper. My sketchbook is an iPad. So, I do traditional commissions at cons, I'll take commissions at places like Anime Expo, but that's really the only time that I draw on paper. But I thought, I do those commissions. I can physically draw on paper even if it's been a while. So let's do this, let's give it a shot. So this was my first piece, which I kind of wanted to set a bar for myself, which of course is drawing a bunch of skeletons. My husband Tyson and I were actually living in London at the time. I did this a few months ago, which, by the way, we've spent a good chunk of the past year living in London because of Tyson's work. So I did this on the dining table of an Airbnb, but I think it worked out okay. I really like bodies. I like skeletons and organs and weird, mushy physical stuff like that. So this was a lot of fun. And after getting kind of the feel for things, I feel like it kind of woke up a part of my brain that had been sleeping for a while. Oh, actually, I'm having a lot of fun. When you work digitally for so long, it's so easy to undo and erase, adjust and tweak. You can throw a bazillion layers on top and you can make it shiny and pretty. But with this, you get the one image and you have to get it right, or you have to be okay with your mistakes. And I feel like doing this show and actually drawing on paper again kind of got my gears turning in a way that hadn't in a really long time. I think the past couple years, I guess it's been since COVID basically, I really went all in on professional work. So for me, working at home kind of turned into home is work. And even now I'm working constantly, which I am very fortunate to have that work. But it's been a goal of mine to create work time and personal time, and I haven't done it yet. It's an ongoing process. So I haven't been making time to create personal work. So with this show, it's been an excuse like I had to do this to really remember what I even liked personally, to explore whatever I wanted, and to be able to kind of put down the thoughts and imagery that I had in my head onto paper. So I think you'll see those touches of being a little morbid, lots of cute girls. I don't have a good sense for clothing and fashion design, so you'll see they're often not really wearing, clothes. But it was really, really fun. Here's just a couple more work in progress shots. This is now back at home in LA. That is a dog pee pad at the top of the right image. We got a puppy and he is not potty trained. So I did go into this show with the theme of distress, which has just been maybe my general vibe for the past few years. So it was really fun to explore that theme in different ways, some kind of being more obvious than others. And I'm really happy with the pieces overall. But if I do get the chance to do something like this again, I'd love to challenge myself in a new way, like maybe try painting or working in color. Maybe it won't be good, but I'll give it a shot. So yeah, that kind of covers a little bit about just the show here. It's been a really, really rewarding experience to take myself away from the computer, just put on some music and focus on drawing without the distraction of my other apps or notifications or everything I can do in Photoshop. So again, thank you for being here. I hope you enjoy the work. And because I know I can't mention a puppy without showing the puppy. Here's our puppy Barber. We got him a month ago and he's 5 months old. He's still peeing in the house, but he's very cute. I wanted to cover a little bit about my professional work. So a little bit about just my history in games. I've been working in games since 2009. The first title I worked on with WayForward was Barbie and the Three Musketeers for the Wii. I got to take the sprites for the UI in the DS version and draw them in HD for the Wii. And I kind of kept down the path of, doing art and animation in games. I've always just been really passionate about games in particular, over, film or TV animation, that kind of thing. So I was the lead animator on Skullgirls for a long time. I did storyboards and character design for a game called Till Morning's Light. I was the creative director on Indivisible. I did the animatic for the River City Girls 2 opening, and just a lot more. I do a lot of freelancing, so I bounce around a lot. More recently, I've worked with Future Club on several R&D projects that are still under development. I did all the cutscene art in Penny's Big Breakaway, which came out earlier this year from Evening Star. And currently, I'm working with Necrosoft on a game called Demon School, actually doing some 3D work for the first time. So that'll be out later this year. And finally, jumping all over the place, I do kind of art support work for Sega as well, alongside my husband Tyson. I don't know that I've really mentioned this publicly, but if you've seen the Tales Tube VTuber shorts that are on YouTube, Tyson and I do all the compositing for them, so we're kind of putting those together. So I definitely stay busy. I'm very, very fortunate, but yeah, kind of covering little bits and pieces. But there is one game that I wanted to talk about today in particular, which I'm sure is why many of you are here, and it's Clock Tower. Yeah, so you might have seen this art, which we unveiled this week. This is the key art I did with the help of an artist named Manuel, who worked on the background, for the upcoming release of Clock Tower Rewind, which is a re-release of the original Super Nintendo game Clock Tower from 1995, which up until now had not seen a release outside of Japan. So now it's being released courtesy of WayForward and Limited Run, and I am incredibly fortunate to be the creative lead on the project, which means I've overseen the project overall, but also worked on specific parts like this art. We have like a fully animated intro, we have physical goodies, and just a lot more. I'm gonna take some water, hold on. Yeah, so if you're not familiar with Clock Tower, it's a survival horror game for the Super Nintendo made by the developer Human, and again, it was released in 1995. It is easily a cult classic, but I think most people outside of Japan have only experienced this game through fan-translated, like emulated versions. I'm one of those people. I actually recently found the live journal entry I wrote when I was 14, talking about discovering the game. I can't remember if I said it was a different year, but I was officially 14, and the game made such a big impact on me at the time that I wrote about it in my live journal. And for me, it was so impactful because it has kind of like this on-the-surface simplicity, but the way it uses that to actually tell a really evocative story, and also to this day be one of the scariest games I've ever played. So fast forward over 20 years from 14-year-old me, for whatever reason, the amazing folks at Way Forward and Limited Run decide that now is the time that maybe we should bring this game to the West and internationally. And they went, hey, Mariel, aren't you a big Clock Tower fan? Would you want to oversee this project? And I went like, what? Like, oh my God, yes, like absolutely. This is my dream project. This is the game that I go back to as the game that I wish I could have made, that I would love to make something inspired by. So just to recap really quick, this release is what we're calling Port Plus. So it is the original game as it was. It's not a remake, not like an HD remaster or anything like that, but it does have a new translation and then a lot of fun goodies kind of surrounding the game to make it a brand new package. So previous to this, Way Forward and Limited Run released River City Girls Zero, which was a Kunio-kun game that never saw a Western release as well. So if you want an idea of kind of what the release of this version of Clock Tower entails, River City Girls Zero is a game that was released in a similar vein. There's a lot that I could cover about the game in general, but today there's a few aspects that I want to focus on, which are some of the newer elements that we're bringing to this release. So when you start the game, we have an updated interface to navigate. We kind of wanted to keep it true to the originals, so we didn't go too crazy here. We have the original box art, kind of expanded out. We use this in a couple places. And for the logo, we kind of took that string going through her throat and turned that into like the motif for the UI. So really trying to like draw from art from the original game. And in the game itself, as you're playing, since the game isn't widescreen, you have a number of options for border art on the sides, and we'll have like, you know, some original art like you see here. We'll have some of the new art, like from the intro, from our key art and things like that. So you have lots of options for like kind of how you want to play the game. And as far as new additions go, the biggest one for me was that I got to direct a short animated intro to go alongside the game. I directed, storyboarded, I roughly animated all of it, fully animated a good chunk of it, did the compositing, the whole thing. There are several parts that I didn't do. My friend Jones Weedle designed the colors, which are really bright and striking. They have like an amazing way with colors that, keep going back to my problem with colors, I don't. Future Club helped tie down and clean up the animation. They also worked on backgrounds and compositing. And Manuel from earlier, who worked on the key art, also stepped in to help with additional backgrounds. So this was my first time doing anything like this. I've worked on every part of like a short film separately. Like I've storyboarded, I've animated, I've composited, all on different projects. So this was the first time that I took a majority of it from start to finish on my own, which was really a great experience. Like just being able to have control and have a vision for it, and actually be able to, I think, at least pull it off. Really, really happy about how it turned out. So I hope that others will enjoy it as well when we can finally share it. In the meantime, we do have just these screens that are from the finished animation, but I think we're not quite ready to unveil, so this will have to do for now. One thing that was released alongside the original game were these full-color manga depicting certain moments in the game, kind of bringing them to life outside the game, because otherwise it's just that, side view pixel style. And what we're doing for Clock Tower Rewind is turning these into motion comics, which you can view in game. So they will actually be fully voice acted, which means we did cast all the characters in the game. We got really amazing actresses. They will have full score and sound effects, and watching the full thing put together just adds like a level of depth and atmosphere that we've never really seen from the game before, but still kind of being true to the original, because all the art is from the time. So it's a really fun bonus element that I think people will really enjoy, just being able to see these more cinematic moments brought to life in this new way. And speaking of score, all the tracks in those motion comics were composed by Dale North, and he also did 2 additional vocal songs for Clock Tower. We have the song that will accompany the intro, and then we have an ending song. The intro song is sung by Mary Elizabeth McGlynn, who you might know from singing the Silent Hill songs. She has a really incredible voice, and she brought a really amazing quality to the music. And we really just had to bring in a vocalist who's like steeped in that survival horror history. So she was really an amazing fit. And we do have an ending song with another fan favorite vocalist whose voice you will recognize. We're not quite ready to reveal her yet, but she's really known for her like emotional, haunting vocals. So she was a really wonderful fit to sing this ending credit song that will kind of bookend the entire game. So please look forward to that when we're ready to announce it. But yeah, we're not quite ready. All of the music we've added though is super, super great. It draws from the original, kind of expands on it, and really brings it to modern day while still kind of staying faithful to the original. And for people who love a little behind the scenes peek, we have an interview with the original director of the game, Hifumi Kono. He shares a ton of insight into the original development of the game and his intentions behind it. We kind of do like a little Q&A interview. And as someone like just personally who's a huge fan, it was really great to have him involved, to kind of have his blessing and input on kind of what we're doing with this new version. So he's on board, he's involved, and it's been really great to have him there. And one more thing we have guest art for the special editions. We have a couple pieces here. This first piece on the left is by an artist named Mr. Kasui, who actually created this piece a while ago as fan art, but we loved it so much that we reached out and asked if he'd let us include it as part of this release, and he said yes. So yeah, really, really cool piece of art. The one in the middle is the piece that I did, and then on the right we have this amazing piece by the artist Shintaro Kago, who's known for his really like bizarre fourth wall breaking stories and illustrations. He's also someone who I've been a fan of for years now, so it was really great to be able to reach out. Like, you can just email him, apparently. So he does commissions. I actually have Adam. Hi, Adam. Adam, as a wedding gift, got commissions of me and Tyson from Shintaro Kago, so that's in my office. It's really cool. But you could email him, and he said he'd love to do it, and so we got this incredible piece back from him, and just like, so cool. It's just really exciting. And the game will have, an in-game gallery. We'll have kind of, this is a bit of the model sheet you can see here from the animated intro. So we'll have some of the new art, but we'll also have scans of like the box and the manual. You see the cartridge here. So we'll have like a ton of new and old art that you can view that's in the gallery. So lots of fun stuff all around. And that kind of wraps it up. I think I went a little fast. But we are in the process of finalizing everything now, and it will be released later this year. You can keep an eye on Way Forward and Limited Run's social media and sites to keep tabs on when. And I think that might cover it. Should we just jump? Let's just jump into Q&A. Thank you.
So just raise your hands, and then Mariel will pick you, and then she'll repeat the question to the audience in case they want to hear it. If you also have questions about any of the other Way Forward games, we have Adam here as well. So yeah, go ahead and just raise your hands. Thank you.
Oh God. Let's start right here.
Hi. I was wondering what conversations were like with, I guess, the current IP holders for Clock Tower.
Yeah.
It's kind of an untouched IP for a while. Is that with Capcom? Is Human still around? Yeah. So what was that like?
Yeah, good question. Oh wait, so I'm supposed to repeat the question? Let's see.
I'm just here if you need to clarify anything.
Yeah, I mean, do you want to chime in on this? Because I think, okay. Well, yeah, just kind of covering like what it was like to kind of get in touch with the IP holders and what it was like working with them. Is Human still around? So I think there was a second there where we didn't know who owned Clock Tower, right? Because the last Clock Tower game was Clock Tower 3, which was published by Capcom. And then there was, if I recall, like Haunting Ground, which came after, was almost like a spin-off, but that was also Capcom. So we had to do a little bit of digging. There's like Reddit threads of people just like wondering who owns this anymore. So we did find that Sunsoft is the company that owns the IP now, and so that's who I believe Limited Run reached out to. I'm looking at you, Adam.
They co-own it with Capcom.
Okay.
Up there. Yeah, sorry. So, yeah, we had to work with Sunsoft and Capcom to get the full license.
Okay, there you go. Yeah, and I think as far as this version goes, we have been interfacing through Limited Run with people at Sunsoft, and they've been really great about the whole thing. We've been sharing them updates. They'll give little bits of feedback that are totally cool. But they've been really receptive to the whole thing. And as soon as we got like Kono involved and hearing his feedback and just his willingness to be involved, just the whole thing, like from like the IP owner, original creator perspective, has been really great, which I think can often not be the case. So really, really smooth and wonderful as far as all that goes. I don't believe Human is around. I think they went defunct. I'm not sure after which game, but yeah, they're not around anymore. I guess next question. Here on my left.
I'd like to ask, what is some of the best and some of the worst artistic advice you've ever gotten?
Oh, okay. What's some of the best and some of the worst artistic advice I've gotten? Okay, so best, I think when I learned how to work in grayscale was like a light bulb moment for me. And this is where I think working digitally and kind of doing all those like adjustment layers and fancy Photoshop things really comes in handy, because what you do, and I don't know if I'm going to get too technical, if you start an image in grayscale, essentially just with your values, where it's like, you know, your light parts are white and visible, your darkest parts are black, and you make sure your image is really clear and visible when it's like in grayscale, like black and white, then you know that once you start to add color, you won't get like colors that kind of bleed into each other or look muddy or you know, make the image confusing to look at. So once you understand how to work in grayscale, like with your values, and then figure out how to bring that into color, that's when you know you get like this level of clarity in your art that you wouldn't otherwise. And I think the worst advice, man, I hope I'm not like calling anyone out, because I don't even remember who this person was, but I took like summer classes at Art Center when I was a teen, and there was one teacher, I took a figure drawing class there, and the class was fine generally, but there was one instance where the teacher came over my shoulder and like redlined my drawing, like just right there. Like I didn't ask for advice. They just like drew over my drawing while I was doing it. I was probably like 14. Don't do that. Don't just draw someone else's drawing for them. That's not the way you give feedback and advice. So that was that was probably a standout moment of like, wow, I really didn't like getting this kind of feedback by just doing my art for me. So yeah, I guess that's my answer. Next question. Over here on, I guess, your left, right? Yeah.
Hello. First, thank you and Way Forward for basically reviving these cult classic games. I know that they're very niche, but I really respect and appreciate that you're trying to bring this alive. I think it's cool. Nextly, you said that they came to you and they asked you like if you were a fan of the series and that, you know, if you were willing to be the creative lead and take on this role. What were some of the risks involved into being like, okay, I've got a huge cult classic on my hands. How do I do this without losing my head?
I don't have a good answer. Oh wait, I have to repeat it. Yeah. So, just to recap, kind of like how you know, I was approached for this project. How do I handle directing a project like this that's such a cult classic without losing my head? And I'll be honest, it's a lot of pressure, because I think I have my own kind of inherent artistic style that I will lean into, but there's also, you know, the expectation of like all the people who love this game that also have their vision of what they would want out of something like this. So I think trying to find the balance of like, I know I love this game to death. This is how I would love to see it brought to life. That might not be everyone's vision for what they'd want to see out of it. And I think you just kind of have to come to terms with it. It's like if you're gonna direct another Star Wars, you have to like fight everyone that has that vision of what they want to see out of Star Wars. And I think that's the case with anyone who's taking on you know, a new endeavor in an existing IP. I think you kind of have to be okay with like, you know, not everyone is going to love it. But I hope that what we've done with it will still make people happy. I think what we've really tried to do is keep as much of the original in there as possible and keep it authentic and bring it back to kind of what it was. And then the extra stuff around it, you know, hopefully, I obviously hope that people love it, but if it's not for you, that's okay. We haven't like touched the original game other than, you know, just providing this new translation. So yeah, I feel like that's kind of how we tried to find this balance of being like, here's the game as it was. Here's a bunch of extra stuff that we think is really cool. You know, it's up to you with what you want to engage with. Next question, right here in the front.
Is there like another game you would like to see that, is it Port Plus release?
Yeah, Port Plus. Is there another game that I would like to see? Yes. So there's a game called Wonder Project J. I don't know if, so I hear a couple of people. There's a game called Wonder Project J. It was a Super Nintendo game, and then there was a Nintendo 64 sequel. And it's a game, it's like a, kind of like a point and click where you're controlling a little fairy as your cursor, and she's teaching a little, like a Pinocchio boy, how to be a little boy. And so it's kind of like this trial and error game where you're teaching him how to do things, and he'll mess it up, and eventually he'll get it. It's kind of like training a dog. But he's like a little boy. But the art in the game is really, really like bright and colorful. It has some really beautiful animation in it, like really cartoony, kind of like anime animation. So if there is another game, if we could do something like this, that would be one that I would be like, oh, that's so cool. Like I would love to animate, something like this, and also, again, like, it would be another game that has not seen a Western release, so it would be really cool to be like, I love this thing, I want everyone to know about this thing. So I think that would be my answer. I don't know how many people here know that game. Well, look it up, it's cool. Next question. Here, yes, thank you. Oh, yes, sorry, with the mask. The one that comes to mind first as being like my favorite piece of like just animation, one of my favorite movies, one of my favorite anime, specifically End of Evangelion, because the animation in it, specifically the fight between the mass production Evas and Asuka, where they have like so much, I'm nerding out over this, they have so much like weight to these movements as they're fighting. That's something that I always go back to, and it's like, I will never be this good, but damn, I'm gonna try. So I think that's something that I always think like, yeah, there's such a amazing sense of like mass and form and weight. And of course the scene in the movie is very emotional. So I think that's kind of one of my go-to, like, stuck in my head forever pieces of media. I see a hand with the hat.
Hi. So the Port Plus is going to be the original game. Do we know which version of the original game? Is it Super Famicom, PlayStation 1, PC port?
Yeah, so we started with the Super Famicom version. And then there is also, can I say the extra? A bit? Okay. So we're so there's actually two versions of the game that we are including. One is the original game, just as it was, the Super Nintendo version, and then there's a version of the game that was like a fan patch online that they basically did a bunch of quality of life improvements on how like the chases work and the speed of some like numbers, but also they backported, maybe I should back up a little bit. There's the Super Nintendo version of Clock Tower, and then there's a PlayStation 1 version that added some extra content. So this fan patch took the extra content from the PlayStation version and put it back into the Super Nintendo version. And we reached out to the people that created that patch and asked if we could work with them to bring their patch and their quality of life improvements to this version of Clock Tower. And they said, yes, it's been really great. So yeah, with this release, you'll have the original game, Super Nintendo, and then this like enhanced version that has all the PlayStation stuff and additional quality of life improvements.
Yeah, one of the things that we always want to do with the Port Pluses is make sure that you get the absolute original version other than the translation. So anytime we mess around with it, like we did an alternate translation in River City Zero, we gave you both. And the same thing with this. Like Mariel said, we're adding the quality of life stuff. We wouldn't just give you that. You can either play the game exactly as it was, or you could play this enhanced version.
Next question. I see 2 hands over here. Can we do one and then the other? Maybe closer to the wall first.
I was gonna ask, so I really love the way in your art how the like room text is like what do you call it? That there's like this juxtaposition between the room text and the cube, right? That's like my favorite thing. So I wanted to ask like what kind of led you to that art style? Like, what kind of attracts you about that aesthetic?
Yeah, so the question was, I guess there's kind of this intersection of morbid and cute in my art, and kind of what led me to work on both of those things. I mean, I think my whole life I've kind of liked just morbid stuff. You know, one of the games that I played earlier in my life was like Mortal Kombat. Like, you know, just like these weird little like formative things. Renting like weird anime at Blockbuster at the time, like Ninja Scroll. I shouldn't have watched that when I was like 10. All these like little things that were like, should I have mentioned that? I don't know if this is, okay, sorry. Just like all these little things I think that were kind of formative experiences for me. But then also I always loved, you know, anime growing up. I guess when I was really young, I was obsessed with Sonic the Hedgehog. But I kind of moved from Sonic to liking games like, there's the Lunar series that I love. I played Final Fantasy VII was my first one, which I was obsessed with. I was like 9 or 10 at the time. So I think these kind of two worlds that I was really fascinated by and kind of were formative for me, I just kind of combined those two. I will say in my teens, I had a full-on goth phase. You know, the dress and the short, the back of my head was like shaved. So I had kind of like my full goth phase. I feel like I look a little more average now, but I feel like I've retained kind of that love for morbid. I love horror movies, you know, that kind of thing. But also just I still love anime and I love cute girls. I feel like why not just combine these two things that I love into, I guess, the pieces that you see here. So yeah, thank you. And then we had another question there.
Hey there, long time listener, first time caller. When I do art, my biggest mental block is shadows, highlights, and light sources. I like to work in 3D environments, Photoshop, Maya, Blender, all that fun stuff. But when I do paper to pencil, I can't visualize what shadows to draw to create. So I was wondering, what's your process? Because I'll do highlights, I'll do shadows, and I'm never ever happy. That's why I switched to motion graphics. What's your process? What's your thought? And I guess if I needed to relate to Clock Tower, what challenges did you face with your own principles having to work with the other art team for Clock Tower?
Got it. Yeah. So what's my process for like rendering light and shadows and I guess like form basically?
On your piece, you know, the forehead is a little bit lighter than hands.
Oh yeah.
More light. It's beautiful, but in my head, I don't know what light sources you're using, so I get frustrated with something.
Yeah. So truthfully, part of it is a little BS. You just kind of like do what you think looks good. But I will say I do try to break down forms into like boxes or spheres or cylinders because I feel like I can understand, you know, how light hits a cube. So what happens if I combine a bunch of cubes and see how light hits it? But I think even there and even with experience, I still won't quite nail it also. So that's when reference comes in. Like for this piece, I was looking up just, other art that I thought was cool. I was looking up like for her shirt. There's kind of like some specific rendering there. I was just looking up like Google Images photos of ladies in white blouses. So I think a combination of like breaking down your shapes into something a little bit more digestible, using reference. I think honestly 3D reference, totally fine. Like there is a site called Magic Poser, I think, that you can pose just like a little 3D person with lights, and I will sometimes use that to just, if I'm lighting something that's really unusual for me, other than just like generic like light in front of your face, it's nice. If I'm doing something a little bit more ambitious, this site called Magic Poser can be really useful for that. And yeah, honestly, a little bit of BSing it. Like, I don't know if, she kind of has a light above her face here because her forehead is lit, but her face is more in shadow. I don't know if technically that casts the shadow on her shoulders exactly that way, but I thought it looked okay, so I did it. Thank you.
I have a follow-up question. Famously, Jennifer, this character in the old game, was basically just photorealistic Jennifer Connelly from Dario Argento movies. This is not exactly Jennifer Connelly. So how did you find your Jennifer? How did you figure out how you wanted her to look and behave? And you had to kind of create a version of her because you're not just using that photo reference from the original game, right?
Yeah, I don't have to repeat that, right? You said it into the mic. So Clock Tower's Jennifer is basically, there's a movie that I think was directed by Dario Argento from the 70s called Phenomena, which is a movie that stars Jennifer Connelly, like a young Jennifer Connelly, and she like learns to control bugs or something. But Jennifer from Clock Tower looks basically just like Jennifer Connelly from this movie. And I didn't want to just copy Jennifer Connelly's face. Obviously, she has some very like iconic eyebrows, so I tried to keep some of that in there. But what I did end up doing, and I wish I could share this, but we're not quite ready yet. For the animated intro, I was having trouble animating her hair. Like I have one shot where she turns her head and I kind of wanted her hair to fall over her shoulder a certain way. So that's where I did actually just look up Jennifer Connelly clips, like clips from Phenomena. And I was like, oh, her hair moved a certain way and she did this twist and her hair did this. She has like big fluffy hair. So I think taking elements of kind of the source, like, how does her hair move, stuff like that, and bringing that into this animated version that we did was kind of how I did my interpretation of it. So yeah, kind of going back to like the source's source in this case to kind of find where all of it came from and do this new take on it. We have time for 2 more questions. I see 2 arms in the back.
Yes. So, Walker, I've been a dream project for you for years, and you get to work on this release. But your first time ever playing Clock Tower, I have to ask, what was the first ending you ever got?
Oh, the first ending. Oh my God. I mean I don't remember because I was 14. That was a long time ago. But I do remember I did actually find the car ending by accident, and that blew my mind. Just the idea. Oh God, am I going to spoil it? There's an ending in Clock Tower that you can get that will cut the game short. There's sometimes games will do this where I think there's like a Dragon Quest where you can like you talk to the king and he's like, do you accept this mission? You say yes or no, and if you say no, like the game ends. Did I make that up? I hope not. But basically there's an ending in Clock Tower that if you do find it, the game actually is cut short. And I found that completely by accident. And yeah, I had never seen anything like that. I didn't know you could do that in a game, like just end the game wherever you wanted. So that was just mind-blowing for me. And I will say, when I first played Clock Tower, I had a really hard time playing it. I found it so scary that I couldn't play it for more than a few minutes. So I would play and then save state, turn the game off, and like take a little break, and then go back to it. So again, it is still so scary to me, and that's why it's made such a big impact. But yeah, I guess that answer went a little all over the place. And then I have one more question back there.
That was my first ending too.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Similar, I work on the Shadowgate series, which is also point and click, also 35 years, started on Famicom, now it's in VR.
Amazing.
So my Nintendo, it's very much like Clock Tower. The artistic limitations are part of the storytelling and gameplay tool. So when we're making a new game, we struggle. Do we go more 16-bit with full-on animation and embrace the technology we have now, or do we embrace the original limitations that we have? So as you were working on this, you had Super Famicom, PlayStation 1. How did you choose the artistic style? How did that weave through the narrative, the gameplay mechanics? What was your process?
Yeah. Let me repeat the question. So you work on Shadowgate, which has a long storied history. So like, how do you find the balance between, kind of like the older, pre-existing versions versus like bringing, kind of a more modern take to it? Yeah. In this case, I feel like we got really, really lucky. Like with these Port Plus games, we have the original game again, just as it was. And the enhanced version that we're including still draws, it just is the original material kind of like brought back into the original package. So as far as the game itself goes, we didn't have to do a ton. We actually got very lucky there. So I think where this question comes into play for what we're doing is finding that balance between the new and the old in all the additional work that we're creating. And again, for say the anime intro, like maybe I'll just go back. Well, here, let's do this. So like this is the style for the manga comics. It is obviously like an older kind of retro. It's more realistic. It has this beautiful, like the watercolor style, but you have pretty realistic faces. And then, there's the version that I directed, which is a lot more modern. It's a lot more anime. And I think what can be hard about that is like, I know there are people that want just this. And I think there are people that will also want the more modern take. Where we found the balance, I think, is including both. There's different forms. We have the original comics as they were. We have this completely new intro, the way that I had wanted to see it. So, maybe it is a matter of finding the places to kind of have both elements. Like here's somewhere where we are creating completely new things. This is a new vision that we want to share with everyone. But here's the places where we are still honoring, the way things were, and we want to keep it, to what excited people back then, and share with people now, what made us excited. So maybe it's not a matter of like merging the both and finding the perfect balance, but more finding different places for each part to exist in its own way. Thank you. Yeah.